The chapel was quiet in that uncomfortable way. Only funerals could be full of people pretending not to weep, of small sniffles swallowed before they reached sound. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, streaking the pews in purples and reds, casting Leela Lennox's casket in a haunting. Holy glow, 17-year-old Amira Lennox stood at the edge of it all, one foot on polished tile, the other dragging behind like her body refused to go forward. Her dress clung to her skin. In the July heat, the scent of lilies mixed with wood, polish, and something else, something sterile and cold. Her mother had always filled spaces, even when silent. In life, Reverend Leela Lennox had turned this town's pain into prayer, rage into justice. Her sermons had packed pews and picket lines alike. But now her body lay motionless, dressed in ivory lace, his face calm but still too unlike her. Amira stepped forward, clutching the small silver camera her mom had given her last Christmas. "Capture the world," Lila had said with a warm grin, "before it erases you from the picture." Now, Amira's fingers trembled as she held it. She wanted one last photo, even if it felt strange, wrong. A final frame to hold on to. The chapel's hush wrapped around her like fog, the moment she leaned in trying to blink. Away the blur of tears, her elbow bumped against the edge of the open coffin. The camera slipped, slid, fell, a dull clack against the satin interior. Amira froze. For a second, no one noticed. People were murmuring behind her, heads bowed, whispering memories or prayers. She looked down. The lens of the camera faced upward, wedged between her mother's shoulder and the casket lining. Her breath caught in her throat. She could reach in, maybe. What if someone saw? What if someone saw? What if they thought it was disrespectful or worse, intentional? Her stomach flipped. Her knees felt like wet paper. She stepped back, hands at her sides. She said nothing. The wake blurred by in fragments. Her Aunt Corinne kissed her forehead. Yolan hadn't shown up. White townspeople hovered around the edges of the service like guests who'd come to be seen, not to mourn. A few church ladies sobbed too loudly, drowning out sincerity with performance. Everyone kept asking, "Are you okay?" Everyone kept not meaning it. That night, Amira lay in her childhood bed, the ceiling fan slicing through thick summer air. Her eyes were dry now, too tired to cry more. Her phone buzzed, occasionally texts from classmates, most of whom hadn't said a word. To her, since freshman year, outside, the neighborhood whispered through open windows. Cicadas, distant dogs, the occasional engine coughing down the road. Inside, silence pressed against her chest like a weight. She kept thinking about the camera, the fact that her mother had died with no warning. Collapsed in her study, they said. Cardiac arrest, but Leela had no heart problems. She was 47, fit, a vegan, a leader. Amira's thoughts spiraled. What if it wasn't natural? What if the letters her mother got, those threats, taped to the church, dormant more than they'd let on? No one had investigated. Not seriously. Not the way they would have if she'd been white. Amira rolled over, eyes wide open. Her voice caught in her throat again, but this time not from grief, from something deeper. A creeping cold clarity. She should have grabbed the camera. She should have told someone. But it was too late now. Or was it? She didn't know that soon, very soon, that forgotten camera would resurface. And the truth it held would light a fire the whole world could see. The dream started. 2 nights after the funeral. They weren't loud or terrifying. They were quiet. Strangely tender, her mother, standing in the middle of their living room. Wearing that familiar sunflower yellow scarf, hands folded, eyes soft but urgent. She never spoke, but her lips moved like she was trying. Amira always woke just before the words reached her. Back at school, Amira drifted through halls like a ghost. No one knew what to say. No one asked why she looked exhausted or why her hands sometimes trembled when she opened her locker. The whispers returned, half pity, half judgment. Her grief wasn't the quiet, acceptable kind. She didn't weep in bathroom stalls or write sad poetry. She just watched, listened, waited for something she couldn't name. On the 5th day, it arrived. It came in the form of Mr. Kenner, an old friend of Leela's and director of the local mortuary. He called the house, his voice low and hesitant. "Amira," he said, "I think I found something that belongs to you." They met at the funeral home an hour later. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows through the windows. Mr. Kenner handed her a sealed plastic bag. Inside was her silver camera, slightly scuffed but intact. "We opened the casket early this morning, before cremation," he explained. "There it was. We thought you might want it back." He didn't ask how it got there. She didn't explain. Later that night, in her bedroom, Amira stared at the camera like it might bite. Her fingers hovered before pressing play on the last recorded file. The video blinked to life, shaky, grainy, and dark. It started with silence. A few seconds of stillness. Then a shuffle. A shadow moved across the frame. Not her. Not family. A white man's voice, low, muttering. "Stupid N. Asterisk. 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 Bitch." Amira's mouth went dry. Her skin crawled. The voice was clear, the words unmistakable. Then footsteps. A faint clatter, soft snicker. Cut to black. 37 seconds. She replayed it 3 times. Her mother had been alone in that room. She wasn't anymore. Something had happened in that funeral home. Someone had been there. Now Amira knew. She wasn't imagining things. The next morning, Amira didn't go to school. She took the long route across town, past shuttered shops and sagging telephone wires, the air already thick with heat. By 10 a.m., her fingers stayed curled around the camera in her bag, like it might disappear if she'd let go. Her brother lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above an old laundromat. The stairs creaked. The hall smelled like dust and fryer grease. She hadn't been here in over a year. When Yalin opened the door, stared at her like she was a stranger. "Amira," he said slowly. "You good?" Wasn't, but she walked in anyway. His apartment was dim and cluttered. Books half-read. Posters from past protests peeling from the wall. A Black Lives Matter sign, faded and bent, lay face down behind. His couch, like it had been knocked over and never stood back up. Amir pulled out the camera and placed it on the table. "Play the last video," she said. Jalen hesitated.
"What?"
"Is this just watch?" He tapped the screen. The clip played. It's the same 37 seconds. The same shadow. It's the same slur. He didn't react at first, just leaned in closer. At second 29, his eyes narrowed. He paused the frame. "Play that again," he said. When it ended, he stood up, pacing, jaw tight. "That voice," he muttered. "No, that can't be. You recognize it," Amira said. Yalin didn't answer. Just rubbed a hand. Down his face. Finally, Craig Tuller. Her chest tightened. "Deputy Marshal Tuller, that's who said it?" He nodded once, slowly. "Yeah, I'd know that smug piece of shit voice anywhere." Tuller had harassed their mother for years, showed up outside church services. Pulled Yalan over 3 times before he was old enough to vote. Called their house once, breathing into the phone. They had filed complaints. Nothing ever stuck. Amira swallowed hard. Why would he be at the funeral home? Yalan didn't respond right away. Then, because he knew no one would look for him there, sat back down, gaze heavy. "Listen, I get it. This is big. But it's also dangerous. So what? We do nothing. Amira, Mama's gone. Don't let this kill you too." His voice cracked at the end. Just a little. She stared at him. She didn't die to be buried with silence. He looked away. For a long minute, neither of them spoke. Then Yalin leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You're serious about this?"
Amira
nodded. "I need to know why he was there and what he did." Yalin sighed. "All right. I know someone. An attorney Mama trusted. Quiet but sharp. Name's Nima Burke. She's not easy to find." Amira stood. "Tell me where to start." She stepped outside. The air felt heavier, but she walked faster now, kind of fast. That meant something was chasing you, or something was waiting ahead. She didn't know yet. It was both. Nima Burke didn't have an office listed online. That was intentional. Jalen gave Amira an address instead of small. Red brick church on the edge of town, half hidden behind oak trees. She met Naima there on a Sunday evening after service. The sanctuary was empty, but still humming with residual hymns. Naima wasn't what Amira expected. It's no blazer, no briefcase. Just dark locks swept into a bun, a long denim skirt, and a voice like thunder softened by time. They sat in the church basement, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Folding chairs creaked. The walls were lined with faded photos, black men and women holding signs, marching, standing tall in the face of spit and batons. Amira slid the camera across the table. Naima didn't flinch. She watched the video in silence, then replayed it. When it ended, she folded her hands and stared at Amira. "You ready for what this means?" she asked. Amira didn't hesitate. Yes. Naima nodded once, then reached into her bag and pulled out a weathered file folder, thick and yellowing at the edges. "This," she said, "is a sealed complaint your mother filed 3 years ago. Against the sheriff's department. Name listed, Craig Tuller." Amira blinked. "Why didn't she ever tell me?" "She probably thought she was protecting you." The folder contained more than just statements. There were letters, voicemails, transcribed, a typed note that read only, "Keep preaching and see what happens." Naima leaned forward, her eyes sharpened. This isn't about one man with a badge and hate in his mouth. A whole system of silence, cover-ups, and whispered warnings. Amira sat back, breath shallow. "So what do we do?" "We don't shout. Not yet. We move quiet. We listen." From there the meetings began. Always at night, always behind closed doors, church basements, pastors' kitchens. Once in the back room of a hair salon, whispers floated like incense. Stories of men in uniforms making threats. Donations that vanished. Women who were followed home after speaking out. In one meeting, a pastor turned off the lights. Its only stained glass light filtered through. Amira saw the colored reflections dance across the floor like ghosts. "This town buries more than bodies," he said. As Naima packed her notes, she paused. "We'll keep digging, but be careful, Amira." "Why?" "Because sometimes silence fights back." The leak came on a Wednesday. Amira was in history class when her phone started buzzing. A string of notifications blinked across her screen, texts, DMs, tags. By the time lunch rolled around, the video had gone viral, but not the way it should have. One headline read, "Black teen claims racism from beyond the grave funeral hoax," or political stunt. Another sheriff's office responds to bogus accusations. "We're the real victims here. They twisted everything." Said the video was grainy, unclear. Claimed the voice could have been anyone. The funeral home released a bland statement. "We believe the footage was misinterpreted and urged the community not to jump to conclusions." No one denied the slur. Just denied the context, denied the weight, denied the pain. By 7th period, Amira felt the shift. The way her classmates looked at her, pity from some, skepticism from others. She heard the whispers trail behind her like smoke. "Isn't that the girl with the funeral video?" What? Her mom was always stirring. "Up drama, just wants attention." She should have kept it private. At lunch, it boiled over. She walked past a table of white students, athletes mostly, boys who laughed too loudly. One of them, Trey Ellison, leaned toward her with a grin too wide. "Hey, Amira," he said. "Heard your mom's ghost caught?" "A racist on tape. Pretty neat trick," his friend snickered. She stopped walking. "Shut up." Trey raised his hands. "Whoa, relax. Just saying maybe your mom was, I don't know, too loud for her own good." The cafeteria hushed. Amira's tray trembled in her hands. "You don't get to talk about her," she snapped. "You never even looked at her when she was alive." "Maybe because she never knew when to shut up," Trey said. The tray clattered to the floor. Amira stood frozen in place, fists clenched, tears threatening to fall. She didn't scream. She didn't punch him. She just turned and walked out, heat rising in her chest like fire that had nowhere to go. The next day no one said anything. But in third period English, A note slid across her desk. "You're not wrong. I saw the signs too." Mr. Alcott, she glanced up. Mr. Alcott didn't look at her, kept grading papers, his pen scratching calmly. But something passed between them. A quiet confirmation. Later that day, she found her locker plastered with a ripped flyer. "Your 15 minutes are over." She pulled it down, hands steady. Outside, the sky had turned heavy with gray. Inside her chest, something heavier still had begun to shift, not breaking, but hardening. Amira didn't want fame. She wanted truth, and she was starting to understand. If the truth made them this loud, this scared, then maybe it was exactly what they needed to hear. The crematorium was tucked behind a line of cypress trees, hidden from the main road like something shameful. Amira stood with her hands stuffed deep into her jacket pockets, heart wrapped in cold silence. Only Naima and Aunt Karine stood beside her. Yalan had said he couldn't do it. "I already buried her once," he'd said. The steel doors groaned. Open. A soft hum filled the room, the kind of sound you feel in your teeth more than your ears. They placed the casket on the track. Amira's eyes didn't blink. The machine roared to life. Heat shimmered behind the glass, and then flames. She remembered her mother's words. "Even fire has memory, baby. It doesn't just burn, it bears witness." Back home, Amira curled up with the box of things Leela had left behind. Tapes labeled 1999 Revival and Racial Justice Forum, Kittredge Hall. Sermon notes, handwritten letters with crossings out and scribbles in the margins. Words layered like scars in scripture. 1. Note read, "They will try to silence me, but they don't own the air." Another, "Keep telling the story, even when they try to bury it." Amira played one of the tapes. Lila's voice filled the room, thick with thunder and warmth. "Black womanhood is not a weakness. It is survival in a burning house." Church bells rang, low and distant, mournful. Amira stepped onto the porch. Smoke curled in the morning air, faint and high, like a soul leaving gently. She didn't cry, not this time. She watched the gray curl skyward and whispered, "I see you." Sighed. Her phone buzzed. A message from Yolan. "They're starting to march. We need to show up." The march began on a blistering Saturday, just after noon. What started as a handful of voices on church steps became a surge of bodies, flowing down main streets, signs raised, fists clenched, chants rippling through the thick southern air. Amira marched near the front, her mother's name scrawled in bold letters across her cardboard sign. "Justice for Lila Lennox." She held it close to her chest, almost like a shield. Beside her, Yalan walked with fire in his eyes and a microphone in his hand. For the first time since their mother's death, he didn't look like a man trying to disappear. He looked like a leader. He raised his voice through the amp strapped to his chest. "We are not afraid. We are not backing down." He tried to silence her. "Now they'll hear all of us." The crowd roared, but the line of police at the end of the street didn't flinch. Riot gear, helmets, shields. Their silence was louder than the chants. Behind them stood counter-protesters, some waving flags, some holding signs that read "Defend Law and Order" and "Stop Playing the Race Card." One woman yelled across the line, her face red with rage, "You people ruin everything." Amira's grip tightened around her sign. The words didn't shock her, but they still cut. Days later, retaliation came in quieter ways. Mr. Alcott was placed on administrative leave after a video surfaced of him attending the protest, holding a sign that read, "Silence is violence." The school board cited professional neutrality. Amira found his classroom empty the next morning. The door was locked, a pale yellow notice taped across it like a wound, but she wasn't alone. The next day, a group of students approached her locker, 5 of them. Black, Latino, and white. Nervous but certain. "We believe you," said one girl, Emily, eyes steady. "We want to help." They started a support group, anonymous at first, then louder. Flyers, petitions, quiet protests during morning announcements. Amira watched it. Girl watched it bloom in the cracks. Meanwhile, Naima was busy with heavier weapons. She filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the county and the sheriff's department. The paperwork was thick, the language sharp, systemic misconduct, discriminatory neglect, violation of civil rights. News stations picked up the story. National headlines followed. One morning, Amira woke to see her mother's photo on TV. Lila, in mid-sermon, arms outstretched, caught in holy conviction. Activist death sparks national reckoning. Amira sat on the edge of her bed, remote in hand, heart pounding. It was happening. They were listening. But so were those who wanted it all to go away that night. Someone threw a rock through their front window. No note. No words. Just glass. And silence. Jalen picked up the pieces one by one, hands steady. Amira stood behind him, his fists clenched. The town wasn't just boiling. It was beginning to crack. The news came on a Monday morning. Deputy Marshal Craig Toller resigns amid mounting allegations. There was no apology. No admission of guilt. Just a quiet stepping down wrapped in bureaucratic phrasing. Personal reasons. Community. Tension. Ongoing investigation. But Amira didn't feel relief. Not really. That night, the funeral home caught fire. She and Yalin watched the smoke rise from their porch, red and angry against the black sky. Sirens wailed in the distance. Flames licked at the roof like they had been waiting to be fed. By morning, the damage was total. Suspected arson, the fire chief said. Insufficient evidence to determine cause. May's voice crackled. Over the phone, the footage is gone. The original files. Whatever was left in their system. It's ash now. Amira couldn't breathe. She locked herself in her room and sat on the floor, the camera still in her lap. It no longer worked. Screen cracked. Battery corroded from heat. Just a hollow shell now. If I hadn't dropped it, if I hadn't started this. The guilt hit hard. She curled into herself, her mind folding under the weight. Jay knocked once, then came in. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Just sat beside her, their backs pressed against the bed. When I was 15, he said softly, I tagged a wall with I can't breathe. Tuller caught me, slammed me against a squad car. My face bled for 3 hours. Amira looked. At him, his voice was steady, but his hands trembled. You didn't break this, Amira, he said. You just stopped looking away. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. She nodded slowly. They're trying to bury it again. Then we dig louder. The next day, Naima called. There's still a copy. Someone backed it up. We're going. To court. The hearing was held in Atlanta. Federal civil rights inquiry opened under public pressure and mounting outrage. 100 seats filled the chamber. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder along the back wall. Cameras whirred, mics extended like antennas hungry for truth. Amira sat between Naima and Yalin. Palms damp, heart rattling in her ribs. She had never been in a courtroom before and never sat in a place where history felt so thick in the air. Like you could taste it if you dared to speak. The footage played on a large screen. The room darkened. No voice introduced it. No context was needed. Just 37 seconds. A faint shuffle, a sliver of movement. Then clear as glass. Stupid N, asterisk, 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 bitch. Asterisk, asterisk. Someone in the room gasped. The courtroom held its breath. For a full 5 seconds. After the clip ended, no one moved. The lights came back on slowly. It felt like coming up for air. A forensic analyst was sworn in next. Tall, bald, meticulous. I've reviewed the original memory card, he said, adjusting his glasses. Metadata intact. Timestamp aligns with the funeral home's closed hours. The audio has not been manipulated. Footage is authentic. This was not staged. This was real. Murmurs rippled like wind through leaves. The chairperson tapped. Her gavel, order returned. Naima stood. Call Amira Lennox to testify. Amira's knees barely cooperated as she walked to the front. Ash. The clerk raised a hand. She swore in with a voice steadier than her nerves. Tell us, the congresswoman asked, how this footage came to be? Amira inhaled. Amira sits. I dropped my camera into my mother's coffin. By accident. At the funeral. Her voice faltered, but she pushed through. I was too scared to say anything. I thought I'd ruined something sacred. But I didn't know. I didn't know it would become her voice, her last way of speaking. She paused, her hands shaking. They tried to silence her in life, and then in death. But that camera caught what we've all known for years, what they refused to say out loud. Tears welled in her eyes, but she kept going. My mother didn't need a podium to speak. She just needed someone to listen. When she finished, the silence felt different, no longer heavy, but reverent. Then the wave broke online. The clip trended worldwide. Hashtags surged. Hashtag Leela spoke, hashtag racism in the coffin, hashtag justice for Lennox. Civil rights leaders spoke out. Public figures demanded reform. Commentators debated. Schools held walkouts. The town where Lila lived and died could no longer pretend not to. No. Later that night, Amira sat on the courthouse steps beside Yalan. The wind tugged gently at her sleeves. You think she saw it? She asked softly. Zhao looked up at the stars. She was the one who lit the match. 3 months later, the town didn't look the same. The sheriff's department was under federal review. Body cams became mandatory. An external civilian board now handled all misconduct claims. Deputy Craig Tuller was no longer in uniform. His badge surrendered. His name synonymous with everything that had been hidden. The funeral home, charred and hollow, was sold quietly to a newly formed black-owned cooperative. They named it Ash. An honor not to forget what burned, but to rebuild with intention. Amara walked past it sometimes, tracing the edges of memory. She never went inside, not yet, but she smiled when she passed. Sometimes people honked their horns and gave her a thumbs up. Sometimes they just nodded. Respectful. Quiet. The video that had once divided the country had now become a symbol. It appeared in documentaries, art installations, murals. One school library painted the words Lila spoke across an entire wall, and Amira, once invisible, was invited to speak at the National Justice and Voices Summit in Chicago. She wore a navy dress and her mother's sunflower yellow scarf. The stage lights were warm. The auditorium silent. She held the cracked camera in both hands as she approached the microphone. This was the mistake that changed everything, she began, voice trembling. A clumsy, scared moment. I dropped it because I wasn't ready. And somehow, it told the story we all needed to hear. She looked out across the crowd. Hundreds of faces, some tear-streaked, some proud. All listening. My mother didn't die in vain, she said, her voice breaking. She left behind a lens. And now we all have to look through it. A single tear fell down her cheek. She let it. Then she smiled, soft but unshakable. Backstage, Yalan waited with open arms. Naima stood beside him, proud and quiet. The world had heard her, and Amira. She was just getting started.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.